to mop today's records clean. File your returns today.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Welcome to the Revenue Pulse, a program on URA TV that brings you regular updates of URA's revenue collections against the intended target. My name is Noella Anaso and I'm the host of this program. And currently the update is the target given by the Ministry of Finance, URA supervisors, is 22.4 trillion Ugandan shillings. And as of the last half-year performance, URA collected at least over 10 trillion shillings, and there is a little more to go. But we do appeal to all ministries, departments, agencies, and all citizens of Uganda, and our dear taxpayers, let's put our hands together and collect revenue enough for national development. During the last 3 programs, we've been talking about taxing the digital economy, and we're excited to bring you this segment today. The digital economy is the web economy, the internet economy, something you're familiar with and have interacted with either through the infrastructure or its platforms like the social media platforms, or you're part of the entrepreneurship that is budding up in this particular sector. But whichever way that you've interacted with it, we say that this sector is growing, and during the last segment, we hosted NITAYU's e-government director, Colin Babirukamu, and he gave us great insight into what the ministry is already doing in this sector. Today, we are excited to bring you Mr. Ken Stoba, from ICT Association of Uganda Private Sector. We are also excited to bring you the Commissioner, Information Technology and Innovation of URA, Mr. Robert Mutebi, and our seasoned guest on this program, Edward Kaiwa, Senior Business Analyst from New Vision. He also joins us in today's segment. We're excited. Today we're talking taxing the digital economy, where we are and where we want to go, where we want to be. Mr. Ken Stoba is also the director, Simplifying Networks, and they've done an amazing job in our country. He's working with ICTA Uganda as director. We would like to know about what ICTA Uganda is doing, what impact you've already had in our country as you've manned the private sector in there. Yes, sir.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me. ICT Association for Uganda is the association that works with all of the ICT groups inside of Uganda, mostly in the private sector. So what we're doing is representatives, hopefully set policy with the government. Places like e-commerce, education, outsourcing. So we have places in all those that we're helping drive some of the needs and provide some of the feedback back into the rest of Uganda.
Wow. Let me welcome Mr. Robert Mutebi, URA's Commissioner of Information Technology and Innovation, to say hello to our dear viewers.
Morning, viewers. Hope you're having a wonderful morning.
Yes.
We're happy to host you here in the URA studio. Being part of a URA, I feel like I'm part of the hosts, but I enjoy the conversation.
Yes, you're welcome. And finally, Edward Kaiwa, Senior Business Analyst, New Vision.
Thank you, viewers. It's a pleasure to be here in the URA studio once again.
Yes. All right, and first we want to talk, what are the challenges? What are those things that are hindering the growth of the digital economy in Uganda? And I'll come to you first, Ken.
So probably the things that are hindering us a little bit is trying to get the information out, but some of the taxes that we're incurring in some of the areas, like specifically on the internet. A lot of our members have been giving us feedback that the cost of internet has been going up and up and up over the last few years. Some of the cost of internet, some of the taxes have been going up. And how do we address that? And the reason this is important is having a low-cost internet actually will help spur economic growth. I mean, if you look at the the amount that we're using the internet today. I mean, Colin with the e-services, we're moving everything into the internet. We're moving everything into that kind of technology. During COVID, we had the children e-education. We're doing outsourcing, so all those kinds of things. So what we want to do is start bringing the cost of the internet down, especially on the tax side. If we look at taxes today on the internet, we're paying currently on internet today, you'll be paying 18% VAT, you'll be paying 12% excise tax and a 3% UCC tax. On top of that, the ISPs then have to recover their 30% income tax that they would do on profits. All that gets factored into the cost of the internet. And so we're having a higher cost of internet than some of the other areas. And what we'd like to see is how do we reduce the cost? Because at the end of the day, that will actually help us grow all of these different other economies, which then URA would be able to benefit from in the future. So if we want to grow e-commerce, if we want to grow some of these industries, this is the way we need to bring some of these core costs down to help us. So that's one of the things. You know, some of the duties that we have on some of the products, I don't know if people know, but we're paying a 25% duty on Ethernet cable. So all the Ethernet cable that we do, it's 25%. And that just gets passed on. We're a provider of Ethernet cable, so we see the cost of it and we pass it on to the customers. What we want to do is, if we can lower some of these costs, again, we can continuously grow the ICT sector and become more robust sector and have a much more powerful entity in Uganda.
Well, you say that, though all indicators show that the economy is growing, especially the digital economy, and that would give us base to give URA the base to tax. You know, when you look at the online platforms, Amazon, Uber, Jumia, we have virtual landlords, we have subscriptions, increase in subscriptions. We have, you know, you probably are logged onto Netflix. Advertising companies are running over here, and we have so many people part of that advertising their businesses. We have the fintechs also operating. So when you say the cost of internet needs to come down, when you say duties on the products need to come down, and yet all indicators show that we have more of our people, more Ugandans, you know, engaging in this and benefiting out of it and making huge profit out of it. I'll come to you, City. All indicators show we need to tax, we need to collect more. What do you say?
So I agree with Ken. The taxes have been going up. But I disagree that the cost of internet has been going up. What we've been saying in the industry is that the cost of internet is coming down because top line cost is dropping drastically. And because of that, we've seen a lot of usage increasing. As we speak right now in Uganda, 1 in 2 persons, 52% about, has an internet connection. If you look at the UCC stats, it wasn't the same a few years before. And what helped us get there is the considered tax regime that allowed that growth. But I think we have come of age because, like you rightly say, you're seeing a lot of the economy shifting into a digital space. And so it's only right that now we begin.
As the hands-on with, you know, when we talk private sector, they're the ones dealing, because I believe ICT Association of Uganda has so many stakeholders. You're trying to merge all the people in the, you know, in the private sector that are interested in IT, in ICT. So you also have the hands-on and the ground experience of what's actually happening. So for you, it's down to the cost of the internet cables and for Mr. Mutex to all of this. How do we make sure, you know, one is not suffering at the expense of the other?
Thank you. It is a good achievement, given where we've come from and the fact that Uganda is still among the poor countries of the world. That's quite a big step ahead. We are trying to get there to probably see that they start putting heavy taxes on internet, because then that is inhibiting. This should be the time when the policymakers look at how to encourage people to use more internet. It is true that there are more people with, you can say that internet can reach about around 52% of Ugandans, but effective use is only 26%. And 26% is very, 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 very little. That alone is not a justifiable statistic to say, let us tax, without caution here and there. We have to encourage people to go online more. We have to encourage online trade. We have to encourage online education and online everything. And once these people get online, that's when, now when they have already built their enterprises, when they have already hooked onto the internet, I believe that is the time when now we can start increasing these taxes to be commensurate with the service that the private sector and the government is giving to the public. Right now, that 12% tax is actually unrealistic. It is too high. And so it shatters innovation. The level of innovation is down because then those taxes drive high the cost. I think that is what he was trying to say, that when you factor in the taxes and the service provider also has to make profit, when you inhibit e-commerce, if you inhibit e-commerce, government is somehow blindly losing taxes because people are not being creative enough, the market is not running as it should, and so you're not getting the taxes that you want to get. So I believe the balance are actively using this internet, especially for commercial purposes, because most of them are on the internet for fun, for rumor mongering and things of that kind. All right?
Insulting big people.
And things of that kind. They are not there for commercial purposes. So first look to grow that space, and then you can begin to tax it the way you feel that you should be taxing.
Okay.
The other thing I think that also is educating people on the use of internet, because like I said, most people just chat. People are unaware that you can use the internet to make money, that you can use the internet to grow your country and also to change your life, get out of poverty. Now, once there is sensitization of the public about that, and this should start actually from school, because as we talk, only about 20% of children who have finished secondary are digital literate, and that is still small, and yet, all right, from about 18 to 30, we have about 70% of people within that space, and yet these are people who are increasingly illiterate about the things that their generation requires to survive. So we need actually to come in this space and make sure that this generation, the levels don't change and they miss out a lot. So there is need to also educate them. The other thing that I think is to reduce taxes on internet gadgets like mobile phones. The taxes on mobile phones are really high. These need to come down because they inhibit access to these internet gadgets, all right? Tabs, laptops, most especially for education purposes. Those ones at least, even the taxes should not be there. They should not be there. And then for the others, these services, all right? Because a small phone like this one is almost 10 million shillings. This is too high. An ordinary person cannot, afford it. The cheapest internet-enabled phone is about 250,000. Someone in the village will not access that. It's like you're leaving it for people in the cities. And yet we know that also a big portion of our people live in the rural areas, and they are closed out from the money economy. So if we want to bring them in the money economy, these are the things that we should do. And once we bring them in the money economy, we can tax them. And when we tax them, then that's revenue for the government. So without overstretching, I think these are some of my thoughts.
Okay. Let me hear you well. And for a moment, imagine, Ken, if the digital economy was ring-fenced, and we say for the next 5 years, no taxes. You are a co-founder of Simplify Networks, and it's a premium and communications distributor, both in East and Central Africa, right? And you've done a commendable job. I know that in Haiti, after the earthquake, you helped to reinstall the network there, and as the ICT Association of Uganda, and there were no taxes. Paint a picture of what exactly you're trying to achieve for our people.
Yeah, I think that, as you were saying about the internet costs, and I agree, the internet costs have come down over the last 7-8 years that I've been here, but we're still kind of playing. So I think we need to continuously grow the capability or the capacity of the internet into the home, into the businesses to help grow. But back to your question, I think that if we can provide low-cost, low-cost computers, low-cost phones and everything, and we can get that infrastructure up and running, the entrepreneurship here will grow massive amounts of online businesses that then can be taxed or can have revenue growth in some of those areas. So the faster we can get that infrastructure up and running, the faster we're going to see the e-commerce. I mean, you look at agriculture right now, there's a whole area that's, most of the people are still using just, SMSs and things like that. How can we take it where we can have crops that can be monitored with devices that are tied into the internet, when to plant, when to do things like that. We're trying to now grow the outsourcing capability of Uganda. That requires massive amounts of data that's required to do these kinds of things. So we're going to have to continue to keep pushing the costs down to grow these other businesses. But again, if you could do a couple of years, we could see the infrastructure now really expand across all the different places, internet, Wi-Fi equipment, mobile phones, computers. We could see this big expansion that could grow all of these different industries. So it'd be a real positive for the US, or for the Ugandan government.
Okay, but then the URA would also argue that not taxing for the next 5 years would be like a student studying and there are no exams. There's no incentive to grow. There's no incentive to excel. There's no incentive to get better. So when you tax, you're encouraging growth in the sector. You're encouraging authenticity in the sector. That's a question for you.
So maybe we have to think about why we deploy technologies.
Yes.
It's normally to drive efficiencies in the market space. And that comes at a cost. But the cost benefit would basically say that there's more to benefit than the cost thing that is truly. We are just maintaining a balance. So my thinking, because when you look at the stats right now, yes, the cost of smartphones is still a bit high. The government to keep pace with this growth, because else we'll be left behind and we cannot monitor this revenue stream because there was no money in the coffers to actually develop the capacity on the government side to do this.
Does URA have the capacity?
We can say that we are developing with the pace of the industry. Right now, taxation is basically allowing you to file. Rather, first of all, we register you. Yes, we have clarement on you and enforce. And because largely the perception is tax avoidance rather than compliancy. And that's a cultural issue that we'll have to deal with in the country. The new capacity right now. We have exchange of information, but we also have things like IFRIS. So these digital portals ideally should embed this into their platforms. Most times they don't, so we try to enforce that. And we're coming up with many other ways that we can enforce, but that shouldn't really be where we should be spending money. I wish the country was compliant, because then I would say, yes, we have the capacity.
Well, Edward.
Sorry, I was going to say that by nature human beings don't want to be compliant when it comes to taxes. Because when we read the Bible, even from as far back as Jesus' time, people really didn't want to pay taxes. So I think it is just the nature of humanity. And actually that is where it is first recorded that people didn't want to pay taxes. It must have come from way back.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the nature of people. They do not want to
give to Caesar what belongs
to meet that obligation. Caesar must be a tough man, and everybody feels
Yes.
Then maybe I just wanted to add on what the question you asked, whether URA has the capacity to tax, the resource capacity within URA. But now you to do that. So you can't, for instance, go to MTN and you say, we want to know how many people made calls, for how long they made those calls, how much were they worth, and therefore what is the tax component they are in. You do not have the right to do that. And that leaves you out of that space. In there, I can say you don't have that capacity yet. But also, I can say probably like for instance, equipment to monitor digital transactions. Happened in a year, from the smallest of about 2,000 to the highest. And you're monitoring every single transaction on their platform, the things that they sold locally, the things that they exported, all of them you amalgamate and you know how much do they owe us. That capacity right now is not there. So I would say yes, there's capacity, and yes, there's no capacity.
There's no capacity. So there's capacity to collect.
Yes.
On the principle of self-declaration, there is no capacity to enforce.
To enforce.
And snoop and make sure that we hold you honest.
When we
And
talk
that's what
about
we are developing.
enforcement, because it's a term we know that most taxpayers don't want to hear, and you know, some look at it, well, the one that you know is in the wrong, say a smuggler, or you know, they'll just you know surrender and say yes, I was, you know, I did something wrong. But then there is the person that is actually in line, that is getting regular assessments. They will argue and say you're the kind of parent that fails to, you know, nurture your child into something. So eventually when they're of age and are not manifesting what you intended for them to nurture at that age, you instead use, you know, force. So sometimes when they find a parent caning a child that is a teenager, that is way out of line, and then, you know, somebody saying, but you didn't take the time to nurture this person into compliance. So isn't that a gap on URA's part?
I think taxation should be a partnership, to be honest, because you can't tax a business that doesn't exist. So it's in our interest to see these businesses grow.
Grow, yes.
But it's also in our interest to develop the country. So that's where the partnership comes in, because you cannot thrive in a business with a failed state as a country. So there must be a fair balance. And the principles, like I said earlier, are for self-declaration first. Unfortunately, that is what is saying here. So we find ourselves in that space where you have to get into the person's business, know it end to end, for you to be. So, for example, we have this IFRIS platform that we can be able to, with so much ease, but there's a lot of resistance for us to embed this into even our digital portals, but even in point of sale terminals within obvious spaces where goods and services are sold. So, and at the same time, we have to develop businesses together for this whole, for it to work for all of us.
Okay.
I believe that because you're trying to flush out informality, because this is a simplified way of flushing out informality.
Yes.
Because even the informal person now finds themselves in the, you know, on the tax list without actually wanting to be there.
Yes.
And then you're eating into what they've been eating alone. So
Yes.
even if it were you, you wouldn't really want to.
But then when you think about Ken here, who is paying taxes, he's saying you're making me carry this burden alone. We need to expand the tax base to include everyone for it to be fair. So somehow,
I think that one falls squarely on you as URA, because you need to do a lot to create a tax compliance culture. It just doesn't exist. Our people are not compliant, not only in taxes, they're not compliant on anything.
yeah.
So if now we want them to be compliant in tax, URA has to step in those shoes, because no other government entity is going to stand in that space and do that. So you are the ones that have to come up and you know, sensitize people, show them, educate them, lead them, so that they appreciate the benefit of being compliant.
That's true.
Once people understand that, then of course compliance can grow. Of course, I know that right now there are some bit of incentives, and they're helping a few other people come out from the cold and say, you know what, I'm here. But still, that response is not as much as it should have been. Because also personally I think that the effort is not as much as it should really have been. You've put in some effort, but not really to the best that you can. So if you add in their effort, if you can get some bit of funding, because it's up to you to ask for this funding and justify you know, your request. Once you get it, then you use it, because that's a needed space. It will take years and years, and we shall always be talking about the same things if Ugandans don't want to be compliant. Because I found something that is very interesting, where you find formal people operating both formally and informally.
Yeah.
In the same premises, you can go and transact with them formally, but if you want to transact informally, they also have services for you.
Yeah.
Now, that's queer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's queer. So we just need people to appreciate this. Those who
Yeah.
are compliant because they are targeting something, or they are being forced to be compliant. Can they be compliant because they want to?
Okay.
Well, I think it's also too is, how we all learn is reinforce good behavior. So if we can find people who are doing the right things, people who are paying their taxes on time, who are self-reporting and things like that, can we then figure out how to reward them with services, with rewards? I don't know what the right policy is, but that's how you get people compliant. If I know if I do this, I get something out of it.
I believe we've talked about the enforcement side, but URA, I think lately we see initiatives like that to Jenge Bus. That's URA trying to reach down to the last person in that inaccessible village, or URA is now on WhatsApp. There's a new contact center, so taxpayers can call anytime. It's increased its stakeholder engagements. At least we are seeing some of that. I don't think it's far behind when it comes to engaging taxpayers, but still has a long way to go. So let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the recommendations and the direction we need to take. Thank you so much.
Acquiring a tin is now easier than ever before with a new interface that is brief, simple, and cuts out all the excess fields from previous applications. All you need is your national ID or driver's license or passports and internet access, and you're good to go. No more waiting in long queues, as you can now acquire a tin instantly from wherever you are. Remember, it's free. Experience our new and improved modern interface that is user-friendly.
Thank you for paying your taxes.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together. Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
In chess, the small one can become the big one. It's the same here. And here too. Watch every move. Record every number so you can plan better. No matter the size of your dream, tomorrow's success belongs to those who keep today's records clean. File your returns today.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
Welcome back. You're watching the Revenue Pulse. Your host Noella here, and I have the Commissioner, Information Technology and Innovation, URA, Mr. Robert Mutebi. We also have Mr. Ken Stober, yes, from ICT Association of Uganda. He's a director in there and also a co-founder of Simplifying Networks. We also have Edward Kaiwa, Senior Business Analyst from the New Vision, and we're excited to continue this conversation. You can send in your question. I think we saw the pictures of what Haiti looked like right after that earthquake. what would be your recommend? Because you have the hands-on thing. I think we're still trying to get the place of balance in all this. What would be your recommendations?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think with Haiti, it was after a massive disaster, so comparing that, I think, is really hard to do.
Yes.
But I think back to some of the recommendation is, what are the key things we need to grow our industry, to grow the ICT industry in Uganda to make it very robust. As I mentioned earlier, outsourcing is going to become a very big thing.
Yeah.
We're a prime candidate for outsourcing. Our labor costs are low here. If we can keep driving the costs down. I had an outsourcing firm came into my office and he wants 100 megabits per second. External services, like if I have a Gmail service or if I buy Windows from outside of Uganda, I have to pay an 18% VAT that's unrecoverable. So what it's done now is it's actually increased our cost of doing some of these things. If I have outsourcing services that are outside or any type of web development, which now just makes all of those products 18% higher than if we were not in Uganda. So those are the kinds of things we have to look at, besides the cost of some of the internet stuff. Those are the kinds of things we have to look at is, what are the things that will help us grow our industry? How do we keep our costs down as low as possible? Let's grow the base. Let's get huge penetration of internet across the board. Instead of the 50% or whatever the number is, let's get to 80, 90% of the people able to access internet. Then we're going to be able to put all these other services. Our government is moving everything to the internet. During COVID, all the information I was getting was coming from the internet, coming from Twitter, saying, here's what's going on, because we were all sitting at home. If I can't afford the internet while I'm sitting at home getting some of these in the pandemic situations, that's a disadvantage to us.
Okay. We know that at least there's 4,000 kilometers of optic fiber, at least 7,000. Does the private sector feel facilitated by the actions of the government?
Yeah, you not only just do you have the government putting that in, but you have the MTNs and the Airtels and everybody else putting in. So the massive amount of growth. There was a big ring that was put in with Airtel and Facebook a couple of years ago up in the northern part that was not, especially in the fiber stuff, growing dramatically. It's just then once the infrastructure is there, one, it has to be paid for, but then two, then you have to have the internet on top of it. But we are seeing the infrastructure growing substantially, which is a great sign for us.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Edward, and when it comes to our people over at New Vision, do you see more people, using internet for communication, because of, as a direct link to what the government is doing? Do people feel facilitated in all that they have to do?
You can't deny the fact that there is growth. You also can't deny the fact that government has done something in that direction. But also, like Kenya said, the private, especially telecoms, MTN, Airtel, and the others, they're investing hundreds of millions every year in, network and become efficient. Yes, there's growth. There's growth, people feel it. From where we stand, we see it.
Wow. Mr. Mutebi, we talked about the Estonia miracle in the last, during the last program. Colin was telling us about the Estonia miracle. They're at a place where you only have to get out of your house for two things, to either to divorce, because you can't do that online. Yes, but every other thing is now online.
Yeah.
You, from your expertise, do you see us getting to that place?
Yes, we will, because we're not isolated from the global economy. We're part and parcel of it. We're a net importer country, so a lot of what we consume in this country comes from outside. And even our labor force, if you look, we have a lot of opportunity out there to participate in this digital economy. So what Ken is saying, for example, that if you look at cloud computing, when you think about jobs in this country with very high numbers of unemployed people, there's quite massive opportunity to work online. And so I relate with what he's saying, that if we drive down this cost, then we can attract more opportunity in country. The challenge that we have is tracking that opportunity to make sure that taxation happens. We're only in conversations right now with the big tech companies, for example, to pay their income tax in this country and VAT in this country. For the domestic organizations, we don't struggle with that at all. So how do we realize that? Those are the questions we have to grapple with and deal with. if I was a software developer, and we have many graduates who do that kind of work online, how do I collect your payee? How do I make sure that your NSSF is returned? So because those questions are not very well answered yet, returns within my country and be able to account for it. So, like I said, the enforcement bit is an area we are navigating. Where we are right now is we have opportunities to share information across countries, and we're signing up to such partnerships. But we want to move to a level where we can declare, I mean, these companies can pay income tax and their declarations can be filed and informed into their own countries, so that this kind of problem is saying. So because we are not isolated in the world, we are part of this digital economy, and the internet connects all of us. We will get there.
Wow. Edward, I see that within this week, the Ministry of ICT launched a campaign to position Uganda as an innovation destination. Are we there yet? Should all eyes be on Uganda right now?
It's there, then we would not be out there still trying to make people to come so that they can help us to get there. It means we are not there, but we are on the way. There has been a lot of growth. We have some of the most excellent IT graduates and practitioners in this country. We have some of the most impressive innovations coming out of this country. Of course, there are other countries that are coming up with impressive innovations, but we have them here also. It means we are getting...
Like,
pardon?
an impressive innovation?
There are so many innovations, especially in the fintech area, that came out of a time of need. There are so many others. There are so many others. I wouldn't want to start going into specifics, because if I mention something, somebody else may... All about marketing. We just have to market ourselves. It's all about marketing. It's all about the image we create for ourselves. And of course, helped by a few innovation hubs in every region. And I've tried to think so hard, and the only innovation hub I can see is the one artist.
No, I think just drive it, or the private drive it, is probably not going to help. We need to get the two groups together. How do we get the private public sector together to drive some of the initiatives? Like, for example, Simplify. When I first came here, for the last 7 or 8 years, we've donated equipment, we've co-taught classes, we actually do a lot of programs with the Net Labs at McCary, because again, what we want is the quality of the education to continuously grow, so that they're employable skills as they come out. But we have such an entrepreneurial environment here that I've never seen in the world anywhere else. It's how do we don't want to necessarily harness, but how do we kind of adjust it to go? But I think that there's so many great ideas that we just need to figure out how to get them out there, and then how to work, and this is where the Ministry of ICT can help us.
It comes to all
that we think that we can drive, and then you can play with the...
I think, like Africa generally, technologies to manage, that we've invested so much in these legacy technologies, and therefore can go with the latest. So if you look, for example, in cryptocurrencies right now on the blockchain, we already have an exchange here with a currency called Binusu, created by Ugandans. And speaks to what he's saying, that we have the brilliant minds, the ideas are present. How do we now transform this to monetize them on a global scale? Because within our own market, it's not enough. So we need to be able to roll this out on a global level and to be able to benefit from it. So the people are here. I think what we need is exactly what he said, private and partnerships with government to get this some speed and momentum.
Okay. What is the feel of the ICT members right now, those that are in the ICT Association of Uganda? What is their feel in terms of, do you feel that vibrancy, that is moving towards that direction, that could be guided? There is a gentleman who started had this innovation called Yoza, that's an app that just connects people to wash areas, for their clothes. Yoza in Uganda means wash clothes, and he just sold it for peanuts to, an investor from the UK. Yes, and the guy is making a lot of money. and he even kept the brand name, Yoza. So we're at a place where people have ideas. There's someone who started Your West, where, you know, if you have rubbish that needs to be taken, just get onto the